which was a night game. We were playing Washington State. They did not announce the crash in the stadium, but at halftime, a guy had left his little transistor radio on behind me, was sitting on the bench, and he had gone to the bathroom. And they announced the crash on the radio. They said there were no survivors. I had a date. My future best man and I were sitting there, and he says, "Isn't your dad on that crash?" And I said, "Well, they're playing Bowling Green. The crash was in Toledo. Isn't Bowling Green in Kentucky?" So, I was trying to we didn't want to upset our dates, but I was trying to put the crash out of my mind, because I'd been to a party on Labor Day weekend at Carl Bowser's house up at the end of Marsh Street. It was a little bungalow, and I had been with all those guys on Labor Day weekend at a party because San Jose State had started up later. But when I tried to stay away from my apartment until 1 o'clock in the morning. When I came back to our apartment on the San Jose State campus. There were about 20 or 25 people standing outside the door. The phone had been ringing all night. And so I went in and finally picked it up, and it was my brother Mike. And he said, "Dad's all right." I said, "How do you know?" He says, "Well, I talked to a nun at Mercy Hospital, and she said he was complaining about something, so he was okay." But yeah, it was. To this day, I have no idea who that date was that I had. I mean, it had to be a horrible night for her. But that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Pat. My name's Rod Keefe. I have a few more pixels to add to this picture. Shirley and I came to San Luis Obispo right after Labor Day in 1960, and we rented the back half of a duplex on Stafford Street. In the front half of the duplex were 4 young ladies, 3 of whom were students, and the other one was a young secretary working at Pal Poly. Next door to us was a vacant lot, and on the other side of that vacant lot was John and Faye Hanna. And when I got to Poly, somebody told me, they have a nice deal there in the PE department. You can go up to the gym at noon, and they have various activities there, and you can work out and exercise, check out a locker and all this stuff, which I did. And I was into playing volleyball in those days, so the young man they assigned to conduct a volleyball game was a very gracious young man, and I had said to somebody, "Fine guy, who is this guy?" And they said, "His name is Curtis Hill, and he will be a first-round pick for the 49ers. Because of that noontime activity, I met Don Morris, although I think it was probably after the crash. I met Don Roberts, who, by the way, was an excellent jazz drummer, and that's how I got acquainted with him. And later on, 2 or 3 years later, Ted Tallner in a graduate class I was taking, John Hanna came across the vacant lot, knocked on the door and said, "Turn on your radio." And of course we did, and I heard all the things about that. 3 or 4 days later, when I'm looking at the statistics, I ran across this name here, and I thought, gee, that's funny. I know a guy in Oklahoma City that's in the refrigeration business, and his name is Louis Nettleship, and I wonder if he is related. Am I correct, ladies, that your uncle? And so I made a point to meet John Nettleship and explain to him that I knew his brother. We did not talk about the plane crash. We talked about his brother and met him in that fashion. 2 last little things. I recall reading maybe a year or so later an article in Sports Illustrated, and I think the young man involved may have been Gary Van Horn. I'm not sure. Did he live in Paso Robles? His family filed a claim for workman's compensation on the grounds that he was on scholarship and being paid to play football, and apparently the judges agreed, and this little 3-column-inch article in Sports Illustrated said, "This will change the entire face of college athletics." It obviously did not, so I suppose the thing got overturned later on. But that's one open-ended story about this that I don't know how it turned out. Maybe someone else in the room does. One last little vignette. Several years later, Vic Bucola had a birthday party for his wife, Sally, her 40th birthday, and we were invited to come, as were some other people in this room, and said, "Bring a little gift not to exceed $2 in cost." So I thought, okay, I'm going to get a abacus that will count only to 39. I was surprised how difficult it is to go to this town and find an abacus. I thought I'd go down to Lewis, buy an abacus, and take it apart. I had to build one, so I went down to Law's Hobby Stop, bought some airplane wheels and some wires and some wood, and made a frame and put enough beads on there so that this abacus would count only up to 39. Well, the gifts were passed around, and cards and so forth, and people were laughing at the various gifts, and here came this stupid-looking thing with some beads on it. Nobody caught on to the gag except our resident mathematician, Gil Stork.
Well, my friends, I want to thank you all for your attendance today. I hope you felt it was worthwhile. You'll come back. Our next meeting, Lark, is Congresswoman Capps. And I want to remind you that Polly Harrigan has 50 tickets for seats in the president's box, and we hope you'll take advantage of that. It's very nice of the university to do this. Lark, you've got the final word, please.
I'd like to ask you to give a round of applause to Don for setting this whole thing up. And have a small token for each of the 3 speakers. This is Cal Poly Learn by Doing milk chocolate bar made by the famous Food Science and Nutrition Department at Cal Poly. Thank you, all of you speakers, for your contribution today. Thank you all for being here. Hope to see you at the next meeting. If you haven't paid your dues, catch Barbara. And see you next time. Thank you all.